Today on Game Talk Live, we're examining how young esports professionals interact with the media, as well as how high-profile journalists sculpt the industry's narrative. Let's get to it. I'm Andy Roman, and welcome to Game Talk Live, where we discuss the biggest video game news of the day, live with help from our chat audience. Joining me now are three expert guests to discuss these gaming topics and more. First up is Nicola, is a co-founder of The Story Mob, the world's first communications consultancy dedicated to esports. Prior to that, she led communications for esports at Riot Games for 6 years, managing PR and communications for League of Legends esports worldwide. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Also joining us today is Breslau, known to most as Slasher, a veteran of the competitive gaming and esports industry. He's been a journalist and host for the last 15 years, most recently as senior founding writer of ESPN's esports section. Slasher is now the #1 esports consultant in the world. Welcome, Slasher.
Hi, good to be here.
Also joining us is Nick DeRazio, longtime esports fanatic who now works as esports manager and journalist for Inven Global. He specializes in emerging esports, classic video games, and competitive video game strategy. Hi, Nick.
Hi, always a pleasure to be here.
Okay, guys, let's hop into our first topic. The esports audience is growing exponentially year over year, with news constantly breaking about player behavior and player professionalism. The big question is, are there truly more issues arising, or are we now just more aware than ever about people's personal lives and infractions? Nicola, why don't you start us off?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think the thing that we have to realize here is, unlike traditional sports, players don't really get the kind of ramp up into having, the eyes of the world upon them. Let's say if you're a basketball player, right, you get used to all the way through college, doing interviews, being trained for that kind of thing. So by the time you hit the big time, this is no big deal. The majority of these players, though, are not plucked from obscurity, but at least don't have the self-confidence and the experience to be able to handle complicated things to do with their brands, like, taking criticism or dealing with people who are specifically out to provoke a reaction. So this isn't an excuse in any way, but I do think that we need to be paying a lot more attention when it comes to prepping these guys and giving them the tools that they need to be able to succeed, rather than just assuming that they know all of these complex things right off the bat.
Slasher is someone that's been in the industry for a long time. Do you think there's truly more issues, or are we just now more aware of a lot of these issues that players are going through?
It's probably a little bit of both. There's just more issues in total because esports is bigger and there's more players in total. There's more leagues in total. There's just more people in the industry across all of the games, that there's just going to be more incidents in general. At the same time, esports has gotten so big that there's a lot more eyeballs on everyone. You have access to esports professional players and casters and industry people much more so than you do in traditional sports. It's much easier to be able to get in contact with people. And that's one of the special things about esports, is that you have that connection. You can see them, a pro player, stream directly to you, and you can talk to them quite often. And then because of that, tight agreement between the fans, the spectators, and the industry, sometimes things will slip up just because there's a easier communication between the two.
Nick, do you agree? I mean, do you think the accessibility to the players has something to do with it too?
Yeah, I actually, and you know what, I kind of want to merge both of what was just said, because I think it's really true to why I think this is going to happen more with esports, as in these what are the word? Growing pain years. I think we're going to see more drama, more stuff like this, because we don't have the type of senior veteran coach mentality that, say, a traditional sports would have. Most of the coaches, or some of the people that are supposed to be leading these players, are still very young themselves, or maybe just ex-pro players that are maybe 27, 28, people who don't necessarily have the type of seasoned experience to really lead these young players moving forward. And also to kind of agree with what a Slasher said, I think the fact that esports is so big and it's kind of growing so fast, you have games that are coming out within the same year, and there's already an esports presence. And that means the search for these developers to find their players and to find their pro teams, it's very rushed, it's very quick, and you often don't have the time to really get to know the person that you're marrying to your brand. So yeah, I think there's going to be more this drama moving forward, and it's just going to be something that will be ironed out probably by professionalism.
Patrick in chat says, we are taking more games that we usually play in private to the public platform, and everyone in esports needs to learn to speak to people in real life and online. So Nicola, I'd love to hear from you. How do you get players prepared for a career in esports, and does it differ per league or per game?
Yeah, for sure. And the one thing that I'd actually like to say in response to what's been said so far is I believe, even though there's been a few kind of more high profile incidences, I believe that esports players in total actually make up a very, a very respectful, very well spoken, athlete core. I think that the vast majority of esports players, and if you, to echo what Slasher said, we're talking about multiple players across multiple games are great spokespeople for their brands and for their team. I think when we have these random incidences pop up, we need to think more about what we can do to prepare these guys. And one of the things that I've done in my history as a comms pro is give these guys actionable tips that they can use to help shape their the way that they express their thoughts and the way that they talk to people online, offline, in the media, over social media. This, it can be a tricky balance to get right. And so one of the things that we concentrate on is working with these guys to develop their authentic and natural voice. The last thing that I ever want to do in any media training session is come out with, 50 perfectly polished, zero risk, homogenous PR machines. It would be spectacularly low risk and probably cut down on some of the elements of my job that are the hardest, but it wouldn't be real to who we are. It wouldn't be real to who the players are. So we work with each of these guys to figure out, are you kind of more of a risk taker? Are you a guy who prides himself on a little bit of trash talk, on a little bit of competitive, like kind of jockeying? Are you the more sort of serious, analytical guy? Then we can figure out how best to help you develop that voice and how to deal with difficult questions, how to comfortably navigate areas in which you're going to feel uncomfortable. How, for example, do you do a interview after a loss? Most of these guys find that really hard because it's rife with stupid questions. How do you feel after a loss? Well, how do you think I feel? I feel terrible.
Yeah.
But most of the time we can work with them to give them tips on how best to kind of gracefully reflect on defeat, and how to keep telling their story even when it gets difficult and even when they may prefer to either fade to darkness or to take out their frustrations over social media.
Mm-hmm. So a few weeks ago, it came to light that Boston Uprising player Dream Casper had inappropriate interactions with a 14-year-old. Some may argue that it's a shame that Dream Casper was let go, considering what a talent he is. Is this really a shame? I mean, aren't there hundreds of other players just champing at the bit to be recruited by a league team? Slasher, what do you got?
I mean, don't get me wrong. Dream Casper was proving to be a very good player in the Overwatch League. He was I think he was an underdog for most people's eyes, including my own. Boston was a team that was rated very low, especially by myself, to begin the season, and the expectations weren't so high. And then he came in and he helped elevate that team with, of course, the rest of the players to be a contender team in the first part of the stages. I think the biggest surprise of Overwatch League. However, as I was trying to make a point when this was first happening, there really are multiple players that could take his spot and could fit right into that team and do well. And what do you know? One of their subs' mistakes since the incident has happened, Boston Uprising are undefeated, and they're the only team this stage to beat the Seoul, the New York, and the London Spitfire inside of one stage. Because they have had no problems filling out their roster with players they already have. They didn't even have to pick up new players off of free agency to be able to make this team good. They already have their sub in place to fit right into the system, and they've been chugging along just as well without Dreamcasper in the league. So yes, he was a young talent. He was an upcoming talent too, trying to prove himself in the Overwatch League a lot more than other players that had more star power going into the league. But really, considering the incident that he was under, I would even say it's more serious than a lot of the racial insensitivity commentary that we've had, and that if all the players had to go, it definitely had to be him.
Matthew in chat says, mistake is killing it. So, Nick, so how do you believe that investigations in these types of allegations should be handled? Is it up to each individual league to decide the best punishment?
Well, a lot of people chide about the way esports news and kind of esports players' fate is in the hands of maybe a Reddit or a Twitter or some other large social gathering. And I think that's both true, but I think some of the criticism isn't really warranted. When something like this comes out, like, it simply cannot wait for the official league to do some investigation, nor can it wait for Boston Uprising to do a formal investigation. Like, once something like this comes out, the community will make an uproar. And at that point, it's a problem, kind of, even if it's not true. And that sounds so gross. Like, that sounds like, wow, this is the state of journalism, that if this type of rumor comes out, and what if for some reason it wasn't true, it probably would have been just as damaging towards his towards the team and towards his reputation. Now, in this case, it's maybe a little bit different, because from the very first report, it was obvious that the evidence was overwhelming. Like, anyone could put two and two together and figure out that there was no reason to doubt the person that came out. And more importantly, no one was quickly coming to Dreamcasper's defense. None of his players, none of his teammates. So while I do think that it's important for official bodies to take this seriously, and yeah, I think that the Overwatch League should definitely, or should have, and I'm sure they have investigated, that's why he's been released officially, I think it's a little naive to think that it's not going to spiral out of control on the social web first, and that's kind of also not a very important aspect of these players' both PR training and what's good for the league in general.
So in the early days of recruitment for the Overwatch League, we saw Dallas Fuel recruit some of the biggest, if not the biggest, Overwatch streamers for their team. So how do you prepare someone who is already well known in this space and get them to move into a more structured environment of play? Nicola, would you mind taking this one?
Sure. I think so I've worked with a lot of esports athletes, both, seasoned veterans and brand new pros. Seasoned veterans come with their own brand, right? For a lot of the time, that's part of the decision for a team to pick them up, is that they come with, an established brand, an established fan base, and an established voice. So most of the time, the team doesn't really want to water that down too much. They want them to be able to bring over their fan base with them. And, like I said, if it's a superstar swaggery kind of guy, then you want to keep a little bit of that flavor. But prepping them, I find that most of the time, prepping them, as I was saying earlier, for defeat is one of the hardest things, because they may be used to, a very different competitive environment, or they may be joining a team that's, not as competitively successful as they're used to. Most of the time, with an established superstar comes a certain set of, of characteristics as well. They may or may not be, willing to learn more things as they join a new team. They may think they know all about, social media, and be less likely to want to change or adapt their voice for a new team too. But what every player needs to realize is that each new team is a new brand, right? You're going to be a different player playing for I don't know, Liquid than you are for TSM. So I think that you need to be able to figure out how to adapt your personal brand to the team brand. And the most successful players are the ones that are respectful to that and that take their time to adapt and to get their fans to see them in this new light.
All right, it's time to take a quick break, but before we do, I want to ask our viewers to leave us a comment or send us a tweet at Game Talk Live letting us know what topics you'd like to see us discuss on the show. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name's Todd. We're going to be playing some H1Z1, and a lot of you out there are going to be able to win some prizes by guessing when our guests die. Sasha, are you ready to go play some H1Z1?
Let's do this.
I think we've seen this story before.
We got a lot of guests tonight from all over the world. They're competing for a trophy, our Champion of the Night prize. Which one of you is going to be the best player tonight?
Anybody that comes in my way is done.
Get a helmet, get a backpack, get a rifle.
Kill everyone.
Kill that person.
Engage.
Kill. Oh my God!
I give the people what they want to see.
Oh my God!
Oh wow, he took a big hit. He got it, guys!
Can you throw me in like the Norwegian server or like someplace where they're just not gonna find me?
No.
Did I die first?
No one's died that early in the game ever.
Welcome back, everybody. The world of esports has its fair share of drama, and since it's a new space, esports journalism is still finding its footing. Slasher, as someone who may have inside information or be the first to know, do you feel a certain responsibility to the community to be careful on how you report certain stories?
I mean, of course. There are stories that are more serious. Dreamcasper is a great example. It's not just breaking a story of what player is going to what team or what team is joining what league, but it, you know, involves what could be the police, which, by the way, I have heard is happening in this case. And you have to take those type of stories, you know, in a much more serious way. While I did talk to both of the girls involved in the Dreamcasper situation, but I held off on publicizing anything about that and actually sending them off to other journalists who are working full-time for publications now so they can more seriously look at it. I think Kotaku, Cecilia over there, did a pretty good job, and that is because of something like that does need a lot more care. When it comes to, you know, breaking the trades or breaking other kind of more innocuous stories, it's more about, for me, that I want to be accurate and I want to be correct. And being wrong doesn't really hurt the community, it just hurts my reputation. And anything else that I put out there will be damaged thereafter. So for me, it really is about being right and about it all being correct and true when I put something out, even though speed is, you know, pretty important in this industry.
Mm-hmm. Do you think
it's you know,
go ahead, Nick. Yeah.
If I could just add something to that, because I guarantee that Rod has experience with this, I think it becomes even more like problematic for a journalist, maybe one that isn't as cemented as Rod, who is trying to get a leg up. You know, if you have drama about a player's like personal life, like it's gonna get a lot of views, it's gonna get a lot of attention, and it's gonna get a lot of exposure for you. And here's the thing that's frustrating. As much as people will try to like be on a high horse and be like, oh, that's like really low, I can't believe you would like, you know, like publish that stuff, the community at large like eats it up. You know, like there is a Reddit called Overwatch a TMZ that is growing rapidly. Yeah. It's growing rapidly, and it's actually growing like super fast, and it's getting bigger and bigger, and more people are starting to realize that the drama of these players, some people are more interested in that than the actual game. And I think that's something that we've seen before with streamers. We've actually seen huge subreddits that are just devoted towards streamer drama, and we've seen a lot of the same thing with YouTubers. There's entire successful careers based upon cataloging and narrating a YouTube drama, is making videos about the real lives of these people. So I think, you know, this is something that is also maybe in its infancy in esports, but I always joke, but there's a little shred of truth in it. The first person that seriously makes a TMZ of esports and like really does it well and really like finds the team that all they want to do is get dirt on people, I honestly think that the market and the consumers will be there for it, and it will probably grow and be really, really big.
So Nick,
this has been talked about.
Yeah.
For like a little while. Like the same discussion has happened over the years. The thing I'll say is that drama is loved by everyone in all of the world, especially here in America, where we've had celebrity gossip magazines for decades and decades. We love that shit. We love talking about drama no matter what it is, whether it's movies or the music industry, or all of sports, or now video games and esports. People talk about Logan Paul more about his incident in Japan rather than the actual content that he's making. You know, and that same thing is going to happen now in esports. The thing is with writing something like doing that TMZ style of journalism is that it really kind of only works, in my opinion, in high-end entertainment when you're getting to like A-list movie and music stars. There hasn't really been a replication of the TMZ for sports other than actual TMZ doing sports stuff, which is funny. I know it is a little bit harder, I think, to do in this space. Everyone does love the drama, but coming at it from an editorial perspective as a journalist feels kind of really shitty. And I almost rather let the internet communities do it themselves, and you can still focus on serious topics, which the ones that are talked about most on social are really things that to do with culture and to do with politics. So when you have a lot of the things that we're talking about today, a lot of those issues are because they were talked about in a serious way in terms of their impact on the industry, and then people on the internet will make, you know, the drama threads anyway, and they'll just have fun with it no matter what.
So
it's interesting.
Yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, please go ahead.
What I'm seeing, particularly with the drama stuff, and I agree, this may be in its infancy for esports, right? But it's a sports. When I was growing up in London, there was, you know, a footballer in the newspaper almost every week for, you know, some marital infidelity or some, you know, drunken night out. What I see when I look at this drama, to give it a somewhat positive spin as a PR person, is I see people wanting to get to know more about the players that they're idolizing. Right. So a lot of the time that takes an ugly bent when they're looking for gossip or they're looking for dirt. But if you look at the other side of things, like when I was at Riot and now that I'm working with multiple teams, the content that does best is content that gives insight into a player's personality, into their, you know, their likes and their loves and what drives them and what's their origin story and what's their narrative. So I think when you look at the sort of drama-based industry, what you see is people looking for that kind of connection with their player and taking it to an extreme, because those are the kind of people we are, unfortunately.
Sure. So Nick, should esports journalists and experts in the space be held to a certain level of professionalism?
Well, and here is something that I can talk about very, like, personally, because, you know, I don't have a degree in journalism. I didn't set out to write like video game strategy, which is when this all first started. I was like 13, you know, writing about how to get good at video games, right? Like a lot of the people who are currently working in this space, they started from a love of game and not because they are this love of journalism. Now, I think a lot of people have like evolved into that, you know, like all of a sudden the people who used to write guides and strategies and FAQs, but they were just most naturally the people to talk to the players, and then all of a sudden they were the first one to put out the interview, yada, yada, yada. I think there's a lot of like education that needs to happen, or maybe that will happen with a bunch of actual journalists who have been trained and studied and they know all of the rules and what you should do and what you should not do. Maybe there's going to be a new like generation of those journalists who are very aware that I can become an esports journalist. That's a job. That's something that I can go to college for, or I can start doing at an early age and not just kind of fall into it. I think a lot of people in my position and a lot of journalists have just kind of fallen into it. And that's, you know, both good and bad. Good because it comes with a lot of passion. You have people writing about patch notes the moment they come out. You have people like digging for these sources, you know, using their own money to travel to tournaments and tents simply because of passion. The bad side of that is, yeah, sometimes there's a lax sense of responsibility or even a journalistic integrity that maybe an actual like academy or some like a journalism school would really teach into you. So yeah, I try to be as professional as possible, but I am very, very aware that there's a lot I have to learn. And I'm actually really, really thankful that, you know, some more senior journalists actually sometimes reach out to me and just be like, hey, did you know that you could do this? Or did you know that it's a good idea to do that? I think more of that information sharing amongst esports journalists would be helpful.
Sure. So, Slasher, you set yourself up as a voice in the community, mostly by your Twitter presence. I mean, what's the appeal? Is there an advantage to the kind of instantaneous nature of the platform?
I mean, Twitter's always been probably my favorite social platform other than Reddit. And I've been on social platforms, you know, since Slashdot and Dig, before these, and MySpace, and now this, and Facebook and all that. So I'm just kind of used to all of these platforms in general. Yeah, Twitter's been great for esports. It's connected, you know, all the players, all the teams, all the organizers, all the journalists, all the industry. It definitely is the best platform to discuss and to talk about, at least from an individual person's point of view, about whatever you want to talk about. Reddit is then the best forum for every single game in esports and the way for everyone to communicate at one time. But because I've been on the platform for so long, and it does appeal to me, you know, in the way that just works. Yeah, it's been really good. I think Twitter's been very useful to promote the industry. I mean, the industry has not just grown because of things like streaming, of course, streaming existing and broadcasting, all the games coming out, and esports getting bigger in general, but social media has played a very large part of why esports is here where it is today. You have players and industry people on Twitter that have more following than traditional sports athletes and movie stars and music stars. And now all those industries connect to each other. When you have Ninja playing, you know, Fortnite with Drake, and you have every single person from all different industries talking about it, it's pretty cool. And that could really only happen on Twitter. So it is a very good platform to be able to talk to the entire industry and fans about any specific issue.
Sure. So speaking of Twitter and just kind of this 24-hour news cycle, I mean, Nicola, how do you protect these young professionals from this like news cycle and this constant noise of social media? Because I feel like it can be pretty distracting for some players.
Yeah, it's funny. I gave a talk a month or so ago in which I said when I worked at a PR agency, if the phone would ring with a crisis, I could sort of hit a stop clock. And I would probably have about 3 or 4 hours to deal with it, right, to come up with, you know, a press strategy and to sort of get all my ducks in a row and whatever. Now I literally have minus 10 seconds. From the minute something blows, it's everywhere. And, you know, I have no time to be able to sort of even stop and take a breath. So, you know, it's really stressful. But what I would say is when we talk to the athletes that we work with about social media and about this sort of 24-hour news cycle, as you said, one of the things that we stress is when you find yourself in a difficult situation, when something, you know, maybe a conversation has crossed the line, or you've said something on stream you regret, it's so tempting to try and fix it straight away, right? To sort of, you know, be saying, oh, that wasn't it, guys, like, that, you know, that wasn't what I was saying at all, or to be provoked further and just to rage. We tell the guys that we work with that we're a source of support for them. You know, we want them to be able to take a breath, put in a call and say, with a cool head, what's the best possible way of approaching this? And failing that, to maybe just step away. You know, I am a big believer in rapid response, but I think when rapid response is sort of unraveling and when you're digging yourself deeper into a hole you never wanted to be into, I would always recommend, you know, taking a pause and reassessing. And that can be hard for those guys because, you know, I have TweetDeck up 24 hours. If somebody says something to me, it's hard not to immediately respond. You know, and I'm in my 30s. Like, I don't have as much kind of like lack of impulse control as somebody who's 21 who's used to doing this all the time. So I would always just recommend, you know, going against your natural instincts for a moment and pausing.
All right, we're coming.
The answer usually
go ahead,
to
Rod. Yeah.
Should I tweet this or should I say this is usually no. In almost all circumstances, or whatever the situation is, you got to ask yourself, should I tweet this? Probably better if you didn't than if you did, as someone who has done that many, many times. Usually in the end, I figure out that, I probably shouldn't have done it. Of course, there are certain situations, as a journalist, I am like talking about all topics and I am very opinionated on things. So it's a little bit less on me for what I say. Like it is, but because kind of like what my job has always been is to talk about everything. It doesn't have as much importance, where players and industry people are going to be scrutinized based off what they say because it's not their job. Their jobs are to be a player in the league or to coach the team, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So whenever they do say stuff, it will be taken under the microscope a little bit more. And really, all these players and broadcasters do have to kind of understand that. And if they have to think to themselves of whatever they're going to be doing next, could this somehow be misconstrued otherwise, they should probably listen to their inner thought and not do the thing. Even if they didn't get if them doing it was going to get them a bunch of laughs and them not doing it is not going to get them laughs, but it probably also won't get them into trouble throughout the entire internet, usually take the latter.
And on that I'm sorry, guys, we got to end the show. As much as I would love to keep this conversation going, we are coming to the end of our show. I want to thank all of our viewers and our guests for being here. Tell us what you're currently working on and where people can find you on social media. And we'll start with Nicola.
Okay, well, I am the co-founder of the Story Mob, as we said at the top of the show. The Story Mob is an esports comms consultancy, so you can check us out on Twitter at the Story Mob. Super simple.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, Rod, what are you currently working on and where people can find you online?
I am playing Fortnite and Overwatch 16 hours a day. I'm going back to be a pro gamer in the Overwatch League. I'm training up in Overwatch contenders. I'm on the OW path to pro. Fortnite Pro is coming soon. China's investing $15 million. I'm going to be right there.
All right. And if you guys aren't already following Rod, it's @Slasher on Twitter. All right, Nick.
I can't top that.
Yes, you can. Nick, what are you working on? You got something exciting going on next week.
Okay, I am working on the Inven Global Esports Conference, and I honestly hope every single person that you're currently seeing on screen will be there. It's going to be an absolutely massive esports event. We have, you should honestly just look at it yourself. InvenGlobal.com/IGEC. We have so many speakers. We have so many panelists. We actually have Nicola is going to be there as well, speaking more amazing esports things. And we're going to have, it's going to be really, really great. So look out for Game Talk Live there too, I'm sure. And you should go.
Great.
May 1st.
All right. Thanks to everyone who watched, commented, and shared the show. I'm Andy Roman. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and watch Game Talk Live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific. We'll see you next time.